Hello, this is Hushank Amir Ahmad, a professor at Rutgers University and president of the American Iranian Council. In my last video, I focused on the subject of how US can make Iran a partner again. I explained my reasons for why the two countries must in fact become partners again, as like they were before the 1979 revolution. And I explained how they may achieve this partnership. That is, I put a policy prescription on the table for Tehran and Washington. My hope is that they will listen. I'm not sure. But as an academic and a public policy person, I thought, just like the last 35 years that I have tried to help mend relations between the two countries, perhaps I should try again, and this time perhaps harder even. So in my prescription, I was very blunt, straightforward, and I spoke my heart and mind. Remember, this videos come to you from my mind and heart, not from a prepared text or a teleprompter. After the video was placed in my personal YouTube, I got a phone call from a friend saying, Dr. Amir Ahmadi, do you know that your video, the last video, has been translated, they have been transcribed and translated into Persian. The video was in English and has been published in the website of an opposition group to the Islamic Republic. And that another very popular news site has republished that translation. And that already there is a serious debate taking place for and against your arguments. I also got a phone call from a Persian TV station who wanted to interview with me on the subject, which I gave, the Channel 1 in LA. I am not surprised that almost everybody that was against that video, that is my talk about why and how US and Iran must get together, that every one of them, as I said, against that was opposition, was a member of the opposition to the Islamic Republic. And I mean by the opposition, I mean people who wanted to overthrow the regime in Tehran. Well, I am not surprised with that reaction. For 35 years that I have struggled with this relationship and have tried to help mend relations between the two nations, this opposition to the Islamic Republic has been violently opposed to my peace activism in this particular regard. But as an academic and public policy expert, I feel responsible to stay the course and try to build peace and partnership between the two nations, because alternative is sanctions, war, and everything else, and none of which are in the best interest of the United States or Iran. What perhaps surprises many of people who listen this opposition arguing against me is this. This opposition says exactly what the Islamic Republic wishes to hear. Note that it is the Islamic Republic, the leader of the Islamic Republic, who, as I explained in the video, is against peace between US and Iran. Their strategy is to maintain a no war, no peace status quo, which they have been able to maintain for almost 40 years. Something I am against, because I want peace between the two countries. But this opposition, which wants to overthrow the regime, also opposes relations between US and Iran. And their argument is exact the opposite of the argument the leader of the Islamic Republic makes, although they both don't want peace between the two countries. The two have completely two different reasons for their position. As I said, the Islamic leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, doesn't want peace with the United States because he thinks that diplomatic relations between Iran and the US will lead to its overthrow, that the overthrow of the regime. Well, I think he is right. I have to acknowledge. I have argued as an academic that dictators who establish diplomatic relations with the United States sooner or later are overthrown. That's the experience from the history. That's the lesson of the history. And that dictators, regimes that do not have diplomatic relations with the United States never become democratic, and they never develop, economically speaking, politically speaking. So I understand why the Islamic Republic, the leader of this republic, doesn't want peace between the United States and Iran. But I just can't understand, or cannot at least explain, why the groups that oppose this regime and want to overthrow this regime are also against diplomatic relations between the United States and Iran. Of course, their argument is that this diplomatic relations between the United States and Iran will prolong the life of the regime. That is to say that the America is good for dictators. That America enhances dictators' life and practices. And yet, to my absolute shock, this opposition who lives in Washington, LA, New York, London, consider itself pro-America. Think about it. A pro-American opposition to the Islamic Republic believes that America is good for dictators. But I don't. As I said, I believe democratic ties with the United States sooner or later will lead to the overthrow of these dictators. Period. Now, another surprise, remember, I said the Islamic Republic, the leader of the republic, also dislikes diplomatic ties with the US. That is to say, this opposition takes a position that is exactly the position that the leader of the Islamic Republic, that is the leader the opposition wants to overthrow, takes. Isn't that strange? That opposition that wants to overthrow a regime would oppose diplomatic ties that will indeed shorten that dictator's life rather than prolong it. But then again, as I said, this so-called pro-American anti-Islamic regime opposition group believes that the United States indeed prolongs the life of dictators in developing countries, in countries like Iran. Now, so my theoretical framework, I may say conceptual understanding of relationship between the United States and dictators in developing countries is, of course, is informed by history. I may also say this: yes, America has indeed prolonged the life of certain dictators. That dictators are friends of the United States, but no country I know that has had no diplomatic ties with the United States has ever become democratic. And dictators that do not have relation with the United States live longer. So my conceptual understanding is simply this, as I said in the previous video, that while relationship, the diplomatic relation with the United States is a necessary condition for dictators to disappear or countries become democratic, it is not a sufficient condition. That it is necessary but not sufficient. That's, again, a lesson from history. Now, in that video, I say that if I was President Trump, I will offer Iran only two options: war or peace. I will remove the no war, no peace off the table. Now, I am not a warmonger. I am a peacemaker. And therefore, I propose that following President Trump's own proposition that it wants comprehensive negotiation toward normalization for partnership in economic terms, I said, Mr. Trump, whoever is the next president or current president, I don't take a position on that, must offer Iran a peace plan a peace plan that the Islamic Republic cannot refuse, because if it does refuse, it will mean that it has taken the war option, and before America will exercise war, the people of Iran will pour in the streets and overthrow the regime, because they don't want a war with the United States. They want a peace. 90% of Iranians are for peace with the United States. They are for normalization of relations. It's a small minority, but powerful, that resists. And we must do everything in our power to break that resistance, to make sure that Mr. Khamenei, the leader, stops being an obstacle to this relationship. But as I said, Khamenei has its own concerns and ambitions, just like the United States has its concerns and ambitions. Obviously, in a good relationship, in a relationship that will move toward improvement and even better normalization, both sides have to address their concerns and ambitions. Mr. Khamenei heads an Islamic regime, but this regime is not Islamic in the sense that Iraq, Afghanistan, or Pakistan are. We have the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, the Islamic Republic of Iraq, the Islamic Republic of, many other countries. But the Islamic Republic of Iran is not that kind of Islamic Republic. The Islamic Republic of Iran is a theocracy, because in those other countries, theocrats, that is the mullahs, the clergy, doesn't rule. They are not the leader, presidents, prime ministers, or anything. The average people are, that non-clerical politicians are in charge. But in Iran, it's the clerical figures that are in charge of the state power. And that makes Iran a theocracy, a religious regime, not just an Islamic regime, a religious regime. And Mr. Khamenei is, of course, the leader of this religious regime and calls himself Wali Faqih, the clerical figure on the top, whatever the translation. I don't want you to be bothered with it. Wali Faqih means almost everything, everybody in the Islamic Republic, all the power. But as I explained in that video, this man desires to become an emperor, or at least that's what he thinks, even if he hasn't really spoken it out. He has spoken about an Islamic civilization, an Islamic civilization that he thinks only existed under the Islamic Empire. And therefore, by extension, I believe when he talks about Islamic civilization, he really also is referring to the form of the regime that existed then under which this Islamic civilization was built, propagated. So my argument in that video is, if that is Mr. Khamenei's ambition, why not? What difference it makes for Mr. Trump to consider Mr. Khamenei a Wali Faqih, or an emperor. Indeed, moving from Walih Faqih to an emperor is a huge advancement, is a huge improvement, because Walih Faqih is a religious, theocratic concept of government, of leadership, while empire is not. The Japanese empire, the Japanese emperor, for example. Now, the opposition has taken issue with me on this and says, aha, Dr. Amir Ahmadi wants to make Khamenei into an emperor. We want to overthrow the regime. He wants to make him into an emperor. Well, my answer, first, neither you nor I can overthrow the regime, for now at least. Second, the United States of America doesn't want regime change. They have said it openly and loudly. Third, if you wanted to overthrow the regime, you're welcome. But you can't. For the last 40 years, you, opposition, have tried to overthrow this regime, and you continue to struggle for that. And yet, you have nothing. You have no army, you have no money, you have no ideology, you have no leader, you have nothing. You only have an ideal, a desire for overthrowing this regime. That's all you have. My argument is, let's for a second become realistic. Let's see the realities. This man called Khamenei is one of the most powerful leaders of today. Not Iran, I'm talking about this Mr. Khamenei. He has over $200 billion in assets under his control. He has army, Revolutionary Guard. He has all kinds of people, religious people, and so on. So, how would you overthrow it? The only option is if the United States will do to Iran what it did to Iraq, or to Afghanistan, or America and Europe did to Libya. Well, as far as I know, as I understand, the United States of America hasn't been for regime change. In fact, for the last 35 years that I have been active, even if at times they were for it, they gave up because they felt it is not possible, that the United States doesn't want it to become involved in another Iraq or Afghanistan. Exact opposite. The United States wants to become more isolationist, less interventionist, return home as nationalists as opposed to globalists that they were. Well, that's an argument that I have made, and we will make it again. The bottom line, the opposition wants something that the United States of America doesn't. I know certain conservatives, neoconservatives particularly, hardliners in this country, advocate regime change. But then again, they want Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden to change the regime for them, meaning they want America to get involved in Iran and get deep into that problem and make Iran into a new Iraq or Afghanistan, maybe even Vietnam for itself. I believe those people really don't understand what they are talking about. They don't know the country. In fact, many of these people, almost the majority of the people that argue for regime change and insist and trying to convince the administration in Washington that it should go for regime change. They have never seen Iran, or they have never seen Iran in the last 40 years. For the last 40 years, these people have not seen the country. They have heard about it. They have read about it in the newspapers, in TVs. They have never seen, they have never experienced it. They have not been in Tehran's or Iranian streets. That's one common denominator of these people. People who have never seen Iran in the last 40 years. They have the least understanding of Iran. And unfortunately, these are the people who not advocate regime change, but also advise the Washington and the opposition to go in that direction. Again, I can understand the opposition because they have learned over the last 40 years that they cannot change the regime. The only power that can change that regime is the United States of America. But then again, it can only change that regime if it wanted to make Iran another Iraq for the United States, maybe Vietnam. So I dislike this idea. I oppose this idea. Whoever is behind it, I think, is not thinking right. It is not pro-American. I don't want to question their patriotism, but the Iranian opposition, non-American Iranian opposition, certainly is not patriotic. Because if it was patriotic, it wouldn't ask America to do their dirty work for them. It is funny. This opposition also claims to be pro-American, claims to be pro-Mr. Trump. They're afraid, very afraid, that Mr. Biden may become president. And that's why they are trying their best to get Mr. Trump overthrow the regime before his first term is over. I think Mr. Trump is much more intelligent than that. I believe this administration is more intelligent than that it will never do the dirty work that the Iranian opposition wants it to do it for them or for it. No. And I am realistic. And I don't want also America do it. Not because I am pro the Islamic regime. I dislike that regime. I am also on the opposition to this regime, very openly, let me say. My position is that in Iran, we have a theocracy that has to go. That theocracy has to go. But it has to go in a way that it will not involve America in a war, or it will not lead to an Iran that will become disintegrated, chaotic, and so on. Today, one of this opposition group who spoke to me, and in a TV station as well, they were very emphatic that they don't want America to go to war with the Islamic Republic for them. They wanted the United States to stay in this course of maximum pressure until the Iranian people come to the street and make a revolution. They are for a revolution in Iran, they said. Well, I said, good luck. Iran had a revolution 40 years ago, and it still is paying for it very badly. Another revolution will basically destroy everything, not only that country, but perhaps spread in the region beyond control of anybody. Just like the revolution in 1979 quickly spread into the region and created all kinds of problems. All kinds of forces came out of it, from Al-Qaeda to Daesh and to all kinds of other forces. I just don't want that to happen to the Middle East, to Iran, or to the United States of America, or anybody. So I really don't understand why these people are against my prescription, which is a very simple, straightforward prescription. And that is, first, the Islamic Republic want to stay with no war, no peace. I think, second, that no war, no peace status quo is not in the best interest of the United States or Iran. The history in the last 40 years has proven that. Third, President Trump, at least this administration, and I think certainly the next administration, whoever that is, will not be for regime change in Iran. They want behavior change. They want negotiations, diplomacy. They want economic interaction, because it has become an imperative in the post-corona situation in this country of United States and in Iran. Iran and the United States really complement each other resource-wise tremendously. I explained that in that video. Trillions of dollars in trade and investment are at stake. I also think that the opposition is not in a position to overthrow the regime. So the United States doesn't want to overthrow the regime. The opposition is not for it. Maximum pressure does not do what they think will do, that is to bring the people to the streets into a revolution. Even if that were to happen, that revolution, it wouldn't benefit anybody. The United States, Iran, the Middle East, the Iranian people, American people. It wouldn't just help anybody. It would be a whole new replay of the 1979 Iranian Revolution, 41 years ago. Why to repeat something that has proven to be disastrous? So if that's the situation, then what for the future? My prescription is that the United States offer Iran two options, peace and war. But America doesn't want war. It wants peace. And it should give Iran a big peace plan, which the Islamic Republic will be forced to take. If it doesn't, then it will face the Iranian people's opposition and street demonstrations and God knows what. Now, I want to say this, that maximum pressure, yes, but no country has ever just have come to its knees because of pressure. Countries have pride. They are nationalistic. There comes a time they will tell you, okay, well, come and hit me. I'm not going to budge. But there is a way to break their back. And that is through not just maximum pressure, but to understanding and responding to their concerns and ambitions. And here, when it comes to Iran, there is only one person that controls this relationship from Tehran, and that is Ayatollah Khamenei, whose concern is the safety of the regime, and its ambition is to move that regime toward a whole new system away from this religious fanaticism, Vilayat al-Faqih, toward an empire with an emperor which originally will be himself on top. Let me remind you, Mr. Khamenei is over 44 years old, very fragile health-wise. Even if he becomes an emperor, it wouldn't last that long, naturally speaking. So why do you worry? Besides, for America, for Iran becoming an empire is much, much, much better than the Islamic Republic remaining a theocracy. I believe that will also serve the American allies like Israel and the Arab world. And I believe it will also serve Europeans. But then again, my concept of empire is not a country that takes the guns and runs around and takes over countries. For one thing, Iran just doesn't have that power. Second, Iran has been, in the past 40 years, demonstrating some level of tendency towards that particular system of empire. The Quds Force operates in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, all the way Latin America. But then again, as we all know, their life is limited. Their, I mean to say, power is limited. And they are retreating. Iran already is overstretched. So why do we worry? There is nothing in a name. I believe a religious government is a million times worse than having an empire called Iran. History has also proven that religious governments, religious fanaticism is the enemy of nations, including the nation that creates it. So I don't see why there is so much concern about my formula that Mr. Trump should indeed consider Khamenei's concerns and ambitions. But as I said in that video, that the United States must also make sure that its concerns and ambitions are on the table and responded to. American concerns are concerns about Iran's building nuclear bomb, more missiles, Iran's animosity toward Israel, and the rest of it. They have to be, these concerns have to be addressed practically, not in just words. But America also is a global power. It has regional interests as well as a global power. That American ambition must be responded as well, recognized, addressed. Yeah, Iran may have an ambition for an empire, for staying as a regional power, but that can only be addressed if Iran will address American concerns and ambition. I believe this formula will work. But again, there is only one condition for that formula to work, this prescription of mine to work. And that is that United States of America takes this status quo of no war, no peace off the negotiation table. Just clearly, openly, transparently, publicly, globally, tell the Islamic Republic that there are only two options for our relations. Either we go to war or we make peace. Who in his right mind can think that the Islamic Republic will take the war option? I believe that person has to be sick. That mind has to be really sick to think that the Islamic Republic will take the war option. No question whatsoever that it will take the peace option. But, as I said, it will only take the peace option if it is not just spoken with the language of force, but also with the language of recognizing concerns and ambitions. That's my formula. I believe the Iranian opposition is mistaken. The Iranian opposition needs to grow up, understand that their position against a normalization of relation between United States and Iran is indeed against their interest, and it is in the best interest of the Islamic Republic itself, which is opposed to peace. After all, I believe the Trump administration must also listen carefully to what I say. Unfortunately, these days, Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Brian Hook just listen to the opposition. Opposition that for 40 years have not seen, none of them have seen or has seen Iran. Think about it. Iranian Americans opposed to the Islamic regime, wanted to overthrow the regime, advised America, but that opposition, those members of the opposition, have not seen that country for 4 years to begin with. I'm talking about the leaders. I'm talking about the people that Washington listens, unfortunately. Indeed, President Trump listens less. I believe Mr. Pompeo and Mr. Brian Hook should, Brian Hook is the point person for the administration when it comes to Iran. He also has to listen to the voices of reasons. Voice of reason is the way to go. There is only one solution that serves everybody in U.S.-Iran relations. And that solution is peace, economic partnership. It's diplomatic ties. U.S. and Iran were partnered 41 years ago, and we know that experience well. We must return to that particular experience, to that particular policy, to that particular practice. We must build partnership between the two nations, particularly in post-corona period, when the U.S. economy will surely be in trouble, in recession, if not depression. And Iranian economy is also crippled. And the Iranian people are suffering. Well, unfortunately, the Americans will end up suffering as well after this corona is over. Then economic becomes also again job number one. The corona has made us forget about the economy, the unemployment, the decline in people's purchasing power, income, all of the bankruptcies. But after corona, all of this dirts will come up, and we need to deal with them. Given American problems with China and its competition with India, with Europe, and the growing power of Brazil, India, and others, I believe America must rethink Iran. Iran used to be a strategic asset, quote unquote, for the United States. It became a strategic liability in the last 40 years, but the time now has come for us to make Iran a strategic asset again. Let me end with one memory. I remember in 2000, the year 2000, the American-Iranian Council invited Secretary Madeleine Albright to its conference. I introduced the secretary. Secretary Albright, in that conference, while I was sitting at the platform too, gave Iran a great deal. It expressed regret about US's past policies. Unfortunately, Tehran missed that opportunity. But the point I wanted to make is this, and this is extremely important. Many in this country and elsewhere think that one reason why the United States and Iran don't get together, or the United States doesn't want to work with Iran, is because Israel doesn't want. Wrong. Let me openly say wrong. In 2000, this is exactly what happened. Before Secretary Albright comes to our conference, President Clinton discusses its initiative with the late Ishaq Rabin, who used to be Prime Minister at the time of Israel, and tells Mr. Rabin that this is the initiative I wanted to take on Iran, open up to Iran, express regret for the past, and so on. And President Clinton wanted to know if Mr. Rabin likes the idea or is opposed to it. Well, the fact is, Mr. Rabin tells Mr. President Clinton that he is for it 100%, that Israel will benefit from a normalization of relation between the United States and Iran, that Israel will do everything in its power to make that initiative to win. Well, the story was told to me by Ambassador Thomas Pickering, who at the time was the U.S. ambassador to Tel Aviv. He also was, before, I don't know, before or after, I don't remember, the U.S. ambassador to UN and many other places. A great man. One of the towers of American diplomacy. Ambassador Pickering told me this story. And actually, I have recorded that and published it. So, for those of you who think Israel would be opposed to a move of the sort that I think should happen, should take place are wrong. They are wrong. Israel is for it. Israel will support. Unfortunately, those who are the enemies of the United States and Iran, that is the enemy of this relationship, not the countries, they make Israel to be the enemy so that they can hide behind Israel. Poor Israel. Poor Israel. That is for this normalization, and yet people who are not hide behind Israel and tell the world that it is Israel that is responsible for lack of this relationship. Again, this is a small part of history. I told you. Again, I stand behind every word I say, I have said. I wanted to say goodbye again and look forward to talking to you this Friday, actually Thursday, and then goes on, or maybe Thursday. I wish you the best in this Corona time, and I look forward to your comments and to your help, idea-wise, policy-wise, and in any particular way you can help. Let's build peace between the United States and Iran, because that has become imperative in this post-Corona period.